Have you ever stood in a bookstore, looked at the shelf of Bibles, and just felt overwhelmed? Well, today we're diving into a debate that's been raging for centuries. Which Bible translation is the right one? We're going to zero in on the powerful case made for one of the most famous versions in history, the King James.
Just to give you a sense of what we're dealing with, get this number in your head: 428. By 1991, that's how many different English Bibles and New Testaments were out there. Think about that. A new one was popping up, on average, every year and a half. So yeah, if you've ever felt a little lost choosing one, you are definitely not alone. So the big question is, with all these options, does it really matter which one you pick up and read? Well, for some folks, the answer is a huge, emphatic yes. And today, we're going to walk through their argument for why the King James Version isn't just another translation, but why they believe it's the superior one.
Okay, so the case we're digging into is based on the work of Dr. D.A. Waite. He argues for what he calls the fourfold superiority of the KJV. We're going to break down his points on its source texts, the translators and their technique, its theology, and then we'll wrap it all up with a really powerful metaphor, the anvil versus the hammers.
So the core claim here is pretty bold, that the KJV is superior in 4 really foundational ways. Let's start with the first one, which I gotta say is the most technical part of the argument.
All right, argument number 1. It is all about the source material. I mean, before you can even think about translating a single word, you need an original text to work from, right? And the choice of that text, well, that's the bedrock of this entire debate. At the center of it all are 2 competing sets of Greek manuscripts. See, the King James Version comes from a family of texts that's called the Textus Receptus, which basically means the received text. But most modern versions, they're based on a completely different text, one put together by 2 scholars named Westcott and Hort, and it relies on just a handful of very old manuscripts.
Now this visual, it really brings the manuscript argument to life. According to our source, the Textus Receptus, the one that KJV is based on, has the support of over 99% of all known manuscripts. We're talking more than 5,200 copies. But the text used for most modern Bibles, it's based on only about 45 manuscripts. So that's the fundamental question here. Was the real text preserved in the overwhelming majority of copies, or was it hidden away in a tiny, older fraction?
And believe me, this isn't just some minor academic squabble. According to the source's count, the text used for modern versions has nearly 10,000 Greek words that are either added, subtracted, or changed compared to the text used for the KJV. That's a 7% difference in the Greek New Testament. That's huge. And you know, this debate doesn't stop with the New Testament. It carries right on over to the Old Testament, too. The KJV is based on a Hebrew text called the Benchayim Masoretic text. The source argues that modern versions often lean on a different one, which it claims opens the door to tens of thousands of potential changes through different notes and scholarly suggestions.
This flows right into the second major argument. This one isn't about the ancient texts themselves, but about the actual people who translated them, and, just as importantly, the methods they decided to use. Our source holds the 50-plus scholars behind the KJV in just incredibly high esteem, even comparing them to the giants in the earth from the book of Genesis. The argument is pretty straightforward. Their level of scholarship was something special, something that just isn't matched today.
And the kind of expertise being claimed here is, well, it's mind-boggling. We're talking about scholars like Lancelot Andrewes, who had mastered 15 languages, or John Boyce, who could reportedly read the entire Bible in Hebrew when he was just 5 years old. The point being made is that no modern translation committee could possibly come close to this level of deep, deep knowledge.
So, beyond the translators themselves was their actual technique. The KJV team used what's called formal equivalence, a really strict word-for-word approach. But in contrast, a lot of modern versions use something called dynamic equivalence, which is more of a thought-for-thought approach. It's focused on getting the original idea across, even if it means not being so literal with the words. Our source uses a really simple analogy for this. Think of it like this. Formal equivalence is like carrying a bag across a room. Your only job is to get that bag to the other side. You don't add anything to it, you don't take anything out of it, and you certainly don't leave anything behind. It's all about a faithful, literal transfer. And this difference in philosophy, it has a massive impact on the text you read. The source claims that this dynamic equivalence approach leads to literally thousands of changes. It points to research that counted over 2,000 of these instances in the New King James, 4,000 in the NASV, and get this, over 6,600 in the NIV where words were allegedly added, taken out, or just plain changed from a literal translation. And you know, all of this, the different texts, the different techniques,
It all builds up to the third and, for many people, the most critical argument of all, that these differences ultimately lead to a superior theology in the King James Version.
So let's look at a key example that's presented in the source. In John 6:47, the KJV reads, "He that believeth on me hath everlasting life." Simple enough, but many modern versions, because they follow that Westcott Hort text, leave out the words "on me." The argument is that this is a huge problem. It removes the specific object of belief, Christ, which makes the statement dangerously vague. Believes in what exactly?
And here's another one, this time from Romans 1:16. The KJV says, the gospel of Christ. Again, pretty clear. But many modern versions just say the gospel. The argument here is that by not specifying whose gospel it is, you're watering down the meaning. The good news about what? The KJV makes it explicit. It's all about Christ.
Okay, one last example, this time from Mark chapter 9. In the KJV, Jesus gives this really stark warning about hell, and he repeats it 3 times for emphasis. Where their worm dieth not, and the fire is not quenched. But modern versions, because they're based on manuscripts that are missing verses 44 and 46, they only have this phrase once. The argument is that by removing that powerful repetition, you are seriously weakening the force of a really critical doctrine.
So how does the source tie this all together? Well, it uses a powerful metaphor that really captures the whole argument in one image: the anvil versus the hammers.
So, let's just do a quick recap. The 4 pillars of the argument are superior text from the vast majority of manuscripts, superior translators, who are these unmatched linguistic giants, a superior word-for-word translation technique, and finally, a superior theology that keeps all the key doctrines perfectly intact.
And this all leads to that anvil versus the hammers analogy, which is summed up in this poem. It says, "The anvil of God's word. For ages, skeptic blows have beat upon. Yet though the noise of falling blows was heard, the anvil is unharmed, the hammer's gone." The idea is simple, right? The KJV is presented as this enduring, unbreakable anvil, and all the criticisms and all the other versions, they're just the hammers that break against it over time.
And that, in a nutshell, is the case for the King James Version, based on our source material. And it kind of leaves us with a really big question. A question you have to ask yourself. What do you value most in a translation? Is it easy, modern readability? Or is it strict accuracy to one particular set of manuscripts? It's the central question in this long and honestly fascinating debate. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.